Like if you go with defund the police, it's like, all right, so if you have no police, are you trying to say that that's going to make things safer? And if you don't have police, like what are you replacing that with? Because like we have two big gangs here, the Crips and the Bloods, right? Those both started off as neighborhood watches, okay?
Really?
That devolved into that's what happens when you don't have any regulation, but people forget about shit because it's like, that's so long ago, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's like within my lifetime, well, not within my lifetime, but within the lifetime of at least my father, the Crips came and became one of the biggest global gangs ever. The same thing with the Bloods, and that was all based off of the fact that people were like, we're tired of these police coming in and fucking up our neighborhoods. We've got to protect our own neighborhood, but there's no accountability. So when they want to go rogue and they want to start selling drugs, they want to start doing shit to mess up your community, then it's like you're like, well, who are we going to call to police the quote unquote police?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think like the confusing the hard thing with with that defund the police thing too is that like with Black Lives Matter, people mean different things by it. Like some people literally mean abolish the police by defund the police, and then some people, when you get them to actually unpack what they're talking about, some of it makes sense. Like some people are talking about things like ending the drug war, which makes a hell of a lot of sense to me because I think
Mm-hmm.
it was a totally bad idea from the start, and it's only caused problems. But and then another thing that I think I've heard suggested is like if you have people on the streets with mental disabilities like schizophrenia or they're bipolar or anything like that, maybe it's a better idea to have someone like a social worker deal with those types of people than like men with guns. But if you like defund the police, that's sort of like the opposite of like it's more like I think more like reallocating funds of the police is a better idea rather than like defunding, because there's some places that need there's some police that need more funding. I forget who I heard talking about this, but like I think apparently one of the reasons that police often go into poor high crime areas is they don't have a high budget, so they have to make easy arrests so they can easily meet their quotas. So they go and they arrest poor people in high crime areas, and then like you wonder why that happens, and it's like an endless cycle. Like it's going for easy wins instead of trying to solve the real problems of murders and stuff like that. And if they had more money, maybe they could go with solving the more important crimes rather than like busting people for having some weed or something like that.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. I think that I think the reason why money is allocated the way that it is with police is because we as taxpayers, we want maximum productivity, but we don't necessarily want to pay maximum price, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when people go, why are these schools so crappy? And it ultimately comes down to like the taxpayers and like what they're spending their money on. And I think the same thing goes with the cops. Because the thing is being a police officer, people disrespect that. But I will tell you this, it's got to be a hard job. Number one thing, and like people go, well, why do they see black faces? Like, it's not just black faces. It's like nobody calls the police and goes like, yeah, man, I just called 911 just to be like, man, I don't even have an emergency, just to let you know that shit's cool and I just really appreciate you guys. Nobody calls like that. Imagine a job where literally everybody that calls you, you know for a fact they're having one of the worst days of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think about it. And a
And
lot
then
of people,
putting all it's like putting all black people into the same racial category, or all white people, or all people of any race. Like if you put all cops into the same category, like all cops are bad, that's just stupid. I like I think it's my second cousin's either fiance or husband. I've met him a few times before, and the last time I met him, he was training to become a cop, and he's like the best type of person to be a cop. He clearly like really cares about people, and he had already done like some volunteer work in low income communities and trying to help get homeless people off the streets and all kinds of stuff like that. So that kind of guy is a perfect kind of guy to be cops. And there are cops who are like that, who are actually in it to try to help people.
Well, that's something that I think maybe could be implemented too. Like maybe have minimum community service hours with whatever area you're patrolling, because a big part about patrolling is, and a big part about police officers is we forget that they're also members of the community. So like sometimes when they get emotional about their job, they're getting emotional about what they feel this person, whether guilty or innocent, might be representing, bringing into their community too. Even though that's not necessarily the best way to deal with it, there has to be some level of understanding, because when there's an awful action, sure, everybody's going to sit there and go, that was awful, that's awful, that's awful. But you have to think what was on that person's mind. Why could they have possibly done this awful action? And maybe it was for a good reason, maybe it was for a bad reason. We don't know. Maybe it was out of fear, maybe it was out of hatred, whatever. But you can't just say, I know for a fact that everything was hatred, or I know that for a fact everything was fear, or because there's this thing that irritates me that I've seen in the media a lot, where they'll go, if you're afraid or if you're scared, then why don't you just get a different job instead of being a cop? You shouldn't be. I was like, what kind of person, like even war vets, that's why they get PTSD. Like if you see a gun and somebody's pointing it at you and you know that they're about to do something live with it, or you see something that you think may be a gun, and think about the trainings you'd have to see. I saw this horrific, it was like a Vietnam vet, right? It was a Vietnam vet that like shot down this cop on this police camera on a dash cam. And I saw that and I was like, yo, I know they show that in police training, but that was like the how fast it escalated. It was crazy. And having that be somebody's reality all the time, like I have a serious respect for it. And I don't know why so many people don't get that, or they think that it's easier than that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like yeah, like I've never had any interest in becoming a cop because it sounds like fucking awful. Like I don't want to have all those kinds of challenges. Like you were saying, like people treating you like shit all the day, assuming you're there to antagonize them, and it's like it's so hard to do the right thing. It's there
Mhm.
probably, like we were talking about earlier, there are incentives to bust people for kind of like bullshit crimes, and doing the harder work is really hard to do, obviously. And I mean, like you were saying too, the when cops do terrible things, it's like people rarely look at the underlying reasons, like what was happening in their mind and what happened in their life that contributed to them thinking that this was a good response to what's happening.
Yeah, and the thing that I don't get is a lot of people are arrogant enough to think they wouldn't make the same call. Because I've never been given the business by anybody like on the streets or something like that. Like if somebody was over me and was beating my ass or something like that as a cop, and I've seen people that were like, yeah, like you should have shot him, like he was getting his ass kicked. I was like, look, how long do you have to get? If I want to go home and see my wife and my kids, and my day didn't consist of getting my ass kicked by some random person, yeah, I might shoot. Like you know what I'm saying? I might shoot him. Or if I was just like, yo, it's a long day and like a chokehold on somebody, it's like, look, man, it just makes it easier. And you don't know how many people that person took down that day. And this is all that I know is that people have, everybody has their fuse. Some of it's shorter than others. But especially with a job like being a police officer, which it all depends on where you work. Like I live in Denver. They're very well paid here. They've got quite a few cops here, and you don't really hear about a lot of issues. I mean, still issues happen, of course, but it's not as bad as other places. And like you said, it varies by where you're at. Like I hear in Chicago, it's live because they just don't have enough people. And the cops they do have, they're like, we don't really want you to do your job like that because it's really, really liberal like that. So